What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing out there? My name is Mr. Pagan. I'm your host of God Concept Podcast. I wanted to tune in and talk about this U.S.-Iran war because we all know our hometown love to go to war with other countries, love to stick their nose in other countries' business. My last episode, I touched on them trying to invade Cuba in some type of way, trying to take over Cuba. In fact, Trump said that he could take Cuba and do whatever he wanted to do with it. Those were his exact words. He said, I could do what I want. His exact words. But I guess the U.S. bit off a little bit more than they could chew when they tried to go up against a small rogue country that we know as Iran. And what they thought was going to be an easy victory, perhaps, turned out to be something much, much more. You know, we had several casualties. I'm gonna pull up a video to assist me in my explanation of exactly what's going on and how everything came about, how everything broke down in the peace deal meltdown, basically. Um, Who charges the least for car insurance? I'll be using Tucker Carlson's podcast to kind of piggyback off of what he's saying and everything like that, because the facts to me are a little bit shaky. I like to go in and hear what he has to say and his give his synopsis on everything and how he feel about it, and then actually state some facts, and from that I can give my reading in between the lines, basically, of what I know, to be true. I mean, from what I understand, America put down a new, they wrote a new MOU. It's called Majority Understanding, something like that, Measure of Understanding. So they basically gave a bunch of power. Give me a second. Over Taiwan. But you probably never imagined that the end of American empire would come in a little over 100-day conflict with a little rogue state. See, Tucker Carlson refers to it as a short 100-day conflict, and they already gave in to a small rogue state called Iran. And basically what they're doing is they're transferring a lot of power to Iran, making them a new superpower, around the world, in commerce and everything else around the world in certain areas. A country called Iran, generations of Americans have been raised to believe is crazy and dangerous, but basically irrelevant and certainly not civilized and in no way capable of affecting America's place in the global hierarchy. You just couldn't imagine that would happen. But something like that apparently has happened, and we know because we now have the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran. That's what it is, a Memorandum of Understanding. It's going to be signed in 2 days, this Friday, in Switzerland by both countries. Now, versions of this have been circulating for the past 3 days, and earlier today, apparently on background, members of the Trump administration read the 14 points in the MOU to a bunch of different reporters at a bunch of different news organizations. They immediately appeared on this. And you read this, and you think that can't really be real. That Iran sent out as well. And then, within the last hour, sources in Iran released their version of the MOU, and it turns out to be identical to the one that members of the administration, these unnamed officials, gave to American reporters. So both countries releasing the same text of the... See, this is very important. People don't realize that even if something don't affect you, it still affects you in a way. Something happening way overseas in Iran, a war that they fighting in Iran, while we here living our everyday life, it don't affect you in your everyday life. It affects you when you look at the gas prices and shit like that. It affects you in all different types of ways. But it really doesn't matter to you, right? It's something that's off your radar. Everybody don't pay attention to these type of things that's going on around the world. we got to be more aware and conscious of what our so-called president is doing, to affect us in our everyday lives, because these things matter. These things matter a lot. And if they don't matter to you right now, they're going to matter to your children in the years to come. They're going to matter to your children and the way they live their life in the years to come. That's why it's so important that we stay in tune to what they're trying to do. To be such to be such a young country, right? America is only young. We're about to be 250 years old. To be so young, right? We've come through and we made all types of treaties and alliances and made all types of deals and everything. And we've amassed a lot of power, and I believe that America shouldn't be so bullish when it comes to dealing with other countries abroad and trying to infringe on their way of life. You got to mind your business sometimes.
Therefore, you can't be certain, really, of anything, but you can be highly persuaded, you can consider it overwhelmingly likely that this document is real. At least as of right now, this MOU is real. 14 points to be signed on Friday. It's pretty short, and it's worth reading, at least in part.
But the things they state in this document,
everything.
The things they state in this document is very important, right? And I'm gonna reach back to the podcast that I did about Cuba as well, because America is so fast. Our president is so fast, right? Because he really don't have any power, right? He loves to give the illusion of having power. But our president really doesn't have any power. He has the power that Congress give him, that the people that's backing him give him, right? To make moves and certain moves like this, because they probably been wanting to make these moves for a while. So he really don't have no power. He just is a mouthpiece for the people that's behind him, behind the scenes. They always been wanting to take over certain countries. But in my eyes, that's being tyrannical. Not just to us, right? Not just to us and our own personal theocracies and how we want to live our life. But that's being tyrannical around the world. And that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing for our future generations. For us right now as a people, that's bad for us. You know why? Because that makes us a target. People don't like that. People don't like to be meddled with and tampered with and infringed upon and told that their way of life is not the right way of living. The way their way of doing things isn't the right way of doing things. If you don't like the way they're doing things, stay the fuck from their country. Stay the fuck from over there if you don't like it. They killed the man in their own country for a certain reason. Mind your fucking business. That ain't none of your fucking business. You don't know what that man did. He broke one of their rules, so they're punishing him in the way that they punish him. We might not have death penalties in some of our states and things like that, right? But at the same time, you can't go to another country telling what they're doing in their states and their jurisdictions are wrong just because you choose to run your country in a certain way.
About how this war might end.
It's sad.
It's not ended yet. But how it could end. It tells you even more about the relative place of the United States and Iran in the global order going forward. And it's really kind of an amazing document. And to get right to the point, you can see why neocons are upset. I mean, they have cause to be upset. Not taking their side, but just being honest here. Wow. Here's part of what it says. Paragraph 1. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their allies in the current war, by signing this MOU, declare the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon, and undertake from now on not to initiate any war or any military operation against each other, and to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other, and ensuring ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. The final deal will confirm with the permanent termination of war on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Okay, so that's the first paragraph of the agreement. Israel is not mentioned, but Lebanon is mentioned 3 times. Lebanon? What does Lebanon have to do with this war? Well, strictly speaking, nothing. And when it began on February 28th, we were told by the administration this was purely about disarming Iran and preventing this rogue terror state from getting a nuclear weapon, which would be prima facie a threat to the world. But very shortly after this war commenced, Israel...
Basically, America is letting Iran write their own fucking ticket. right? In this MOU, right? The Memorandum of this Understanding. America is basically letting Iran write their own fucking ticket, right? Why is they letting it? Why is America or the U.S. letting Iran write their own fucking ticket, right? Basically, things that they agreed upon that they wouldn't agree upon in the past, now they're agreeing upon. Why is that? Why are they giving them so much power? Why are they giving them so much leeway? Why is this happening? Right? It's because of the U.S. lost this fucking war against Iran. The U.S. lost this war against Iran. He'll explain it more.
Oh, wait. We're going to take this opportunity not to achieve the goals that they convinced President Trump to tell our nation about, but instead to do something we've wanted to do for a long time, which is steal southern Lebanon. And so very shortly after this war began, Israel started a new war with American weapons paid for by American taxpayers designed to take land from Lebanon, all the land south of the Litani River, which kind of bisects the country diagonally, and then starts hitting Beirut on the Mediterranean, an ancient and beautiful city, maybe the most beautiful city in the world. And Israeli warplanes started blowing up civilians in the middle of Beirut, while the United States was occupied, tied down, really, both fighting this war that Israel inspired. We followed Israel's lead into the war, according to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and tied up defending mainland Israel from the response to that war from Iran. And Israel takes this opportunity to use our money to start a new war to steal land. So this agreement addresses that in the very first paragraph. So while a lot of people in America didn't even notice this was happening, Iran focused on it. And so in order to get everything else that follows in this agreement, the United States will have to restrain Israel, pull back from Lebanon, stop killing civilians in Lebanon, and give back the land that you stole while the rest of us were paying attention to the Iran war. Wow, that's the first paragraph. And apparently the U.S. is going to sign this. Paragraph 2.
See?
The United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran undertake to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and to refrain from interfering in one another's affairs, internal affairs. Why is this significant? Well, because the United States is addressing the Islamic Republic of Iran not as a rogue terror state, the Third Reich reconstituted in the Middle East, but as a normal country. In fact, as a powerful sovereign country whose internal affairs will be, as a matter of record and agreement, treaty, unmolested. Because you don't interfere in the internal affairs in...
And that's what they should have been doing. They should have never been
interfering. And what so basically, this is acknowledging paragraph 2 before we even get to the Strait of Hormuz.
As long as they not building no weapons of mass destruction, right? Nobody wants to drop a nuke on anybody, right? Because of the backlash that it will have on the entire world, right? I don't know if y'all remember, but it was spacecrafts, unidentified flying objects up in the sky that shot missiles in the silo before they even was able to launch a missile, right? A nuclear missile. They blew it up in the silo. Matter of fact, correction, they didn't blow it up. They disarmed the missiles in the silo. And that shit sent everybody in the shock because they don't have any technology that'll detect when you're about to launch a missile, get there before you actually launch the missile, and then shoot a beam of light or whatever the fuck, some ray or whatever the fuck it was, into the silo and disarm the missile before you get to launch it. So before they even got to launch a nuke, it was disarmed. Who has that type of technology? Nobody. Nobody, far as we know. This was done by something not of this world or of this world that don't want this world destroyed, right? By another power that's really in control of all the powers that we know to be the powers that be.
So the nuclear program and all the rest, this document is acknowledging that Iran is not a rogue terror state. Iran is a sovereign nation. In fact, a great power. It's negotiating with the world's greatest power, the United States. And the United States is acknowledging that, hey, you have a right to run your country as you like. And so that means almost 50 years of watching reports on television about how Iran is an out-of-control theocracy that murders gays for being gay and prevents women from getting educated or whatever they've been telling you. We're okay with that now because you're a great power. And if you want to throw gays off buildings, it's not really our business. Well, that's quite a change, whatever you think of it. Paragraph 4. Immediately upon signing this MOU, the United States of America will begin the removal of its naval blockade and any disturbances or impediments against the Islamic Republic of Iran and will fully end the naval blockade within 30 days. Retreat. Pull your troops out. Get your warships out of this area.
They got America retreating. They got them retreating. They got us retreating.
That's a surrender. That's a retreat. It's pullback. So whether you like it or not. And to be clear, this is better than the alternative, not complaining about it, just noting that, wow, this is not unconditional surrender by Iran. Hardly. Paragraph 5. Upon signing this memorandum of understanding, the Islamic
I just want y'all to hear on fact
arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. In other words, they're going to open the Strait of Hormuz and not charge anybody anything for a month. And at that point, we'll talk. But Iran's going to talk not to the United States, but to the Sultanate of Oman, which would be the country directly across the strait to the south, the oldest monarchy in the world. Iran and Oman will determine the terms on which shipping flows through the strait. Because after all, they're the two countries on either side, the north and south sides of the strait. So like it would be up to them. You know who is not up to? The United States, which has effectively controlled the Persian Gulf for your entire life. But not anymore. Now it's up to Iran and Oman and their allies or regional partners. The other 5 GCC countries, maybe Iraq at the western end, who knows, but not the United States. And by the way, not China or Russia either, but the two countries whose territory touches the Strait of Hormuz, they're in charge now. And by in charge, that means in charge of, in effect, the Persian Gulf. Because the overwhelming majority of the commodities, mostly oil and gas, but not just oil and gas, fertilizer, sulfur, the rest you've heard so much about for the last 100 days, flow through that strait.
There you go.
And so Iran is now at least an equal partner with Oman in determining how much it's going to cost the rest of the world to get their commodities out of the Persian Gulf. How much oil-producing, gas-producing nations will pay to get their commodities out of the Persian Gulf. Iran.
That means us.
That was not true on February 27th. Apparently, it's going to be true into the future. So that power, the power to determine who gets their commodities out of the most energy-dense region on the planet, by definition, makes you into a major player, if not a regional hegemon. You're certainly a big deal. People can't dismiss you as a rogue terrorist.
They made Iran a superpower.
You control, in effect, a fifth of the world's oil and gas. Okay, now. And it goes on.
And it goes on. That's what he said. Now, see, I think, me personally, right, I'm thinking that this was just a play. You know, I'm thinking that it was all theatrical, right? They wanted to give him this power anyway, right? I'm leaning towards this was something that was agreed upon already, but they had to actually put the theatrics behind it to show a public show for the world. Well, a public show for us in America, right? Because you would have people questioning, why are you giving them this power? What are we paying tax for? What is our military for? What is this for? What is that for? Right? It goes to show you that our military isn't as strong as it seems. And a lot of this stuff out here is just theatrics, right? It's played upon by the different governments getting together and what is it called? The United Nations. The United Nations plays a huge part in this. Because in the United Nations, this is where they figure out who's going to control what. Who's going to control what? One country can't control everything. The U.S. can't control everything. We can't be the end-all, be-all to every fucking resource in the world. It's impossible. Especially if it's coming out of another country. How you gonna be in control of resources that's coming out of another country is impossible. I mean, you could try to take them over and this and that, but if you don't have the manpower, if you don't have the jurisdiction, if you don't have what it takes to go in there and force a change like they tried to, then it's just not going to happen. But they'll do this to small places. They'll do this to small places like Iran, which I believe they just conceded, right? They got one over, but it was a concession done there, right? I don't know if I just made up that word. But with Cuba, if you look at the way they going so hard on Cuba, right? And how they'll sit up there and demand certain things, right? Demand certain things that Cuba do for them and things that they want Cuba to do, right? When in fact, if you look at the records, right, it shows that America been making deals, treaty deals, and memorandums of understanding with all types of countries. And they never adhere to their own demands, what's demanded of them to do. So technically, we're like thieves. We're like bullies or some shit. But we're too small of a country to be bullies. U.S. wouldn't try this shit with Russia. They wouldn't try to go over to Russia and try to take some shit over. They won't try this shit with North Korea. They won't try this shit with China. They won't try this shit with a number of countries because it's already agreed upon that they don't have the power to do so. So why keep continuing to do this with countries that you don't even have a quarrel with, right? Cuba don't have a quarrel with nobody in the world. Peaceful place. Yeah, they may be a little bit behind on times and things like that, right? But that's because they're not really getting a lot of assistance from us. They get assistance from other places, far as energy, far as keeping their country stable. But America is even trying to make deals with the people, with the other countries that's trying to help Cuba out, right? To make sure they cut off all resources to Cuba. Why do that to Cuba when you couldn't do this to Iran? Why continue to keep up this facade like we're such peacekeepers, but yet at the same time we're such bullies? It's theatrical, man. It's a play on.
Paragraph 6. The United States of America undertakes with its regional partners to develop a definitive, mutually agreed upon plan with at least USD 300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of the Republic of Iran. Not just the reconstruction, not just rebuild the things that you blew up, but help our economy going forward. Economic development. The U.S. has done all.
So basically, we paying Iran to stay off our ass, basically. And we paying them to make sure that we continue to continue to have a good standing relationship of some sort with Iran. And paying them money. $3 billion. These are your tax-paying dollars. But yet and still, we got to sit up here and slave and go to these jobs that we don't want to go to and things like that. But these are your tax-paying dollars that they're giving to another place to make sure that their country is built up better. Not just to repair what we done, going over there and starting this war, right? This theatrical war that we started, right? Not just to repair that, but to actually put money into their country to repair what we done and make it better for the future.
That around the world, or said it does a lot of that around the world, and it has to some extent. But never in Iran, not since at least 1979, when its proxy, the Shah, got booted. And Iran has been, our kind of top enemy in the world ever since. And now the United States will somehow be involved in raising a fund, $300 billion. When this was leaked 2 days ago, most people, including me, assumed that this was disinformation. It was a lie spread by opponents of the agreement as a kind of poison pill. Like, no way. $300 billion? Isn't that bigger than the entire economy?
Going to pay for it.
Can't remember, but it's in that range anyway. That can't be real. Now, U.S. officials, including the vice president, have said, that's not coming from American taxpayers, and that's probably true. That would be very hard to sell. But it's coming from somewhere, and apparently, according to the agreement, the United States will be involved in procuring the money, putting together the fund. Who knows?
Exactly.
But it says right there, the U.S. is part of this. Paragraph 7. The United States of America undertakes to terminate all types of sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, including the UN Security Council resolutions, the IAEA Board of Governors resolutions, and all unilateral sanctions, primary and secondary, in an agreed upon schedule as part of the final deal. Maybe the most significant and most difficult to achieve point out of the 14, ending the sanctions. Now, those sanctions have been in place in one way or another for generations. They've crushed the economy of Iran, and they are, as sanctions always are, an act of war, soft war, but an act of war that kills people, kills kids through poverty, through starvation,
right.
Always and everywhere. Sanctions kill people. Now, you could make the case that the people being killed deserve it, I guess, but you can't claim it's anything other than an act of war. But Americans, for generations, have not had to face that reality. And occasionally you'll see some report from some like liberal international group, sanctions kill, and everyone except liberals in the United States, everyone sort of dutifully ignores it. Sanctions seem like a really easy, low-cost, non-violent way to impose our will on other countries. And we always do them under the pretext of like a moral crusade. Like you're getting sanctions because you're like Hitler. And if we didn't impose sanctions, we'd be like Chamberlain. And we don't want to be appeasers. We want to be like Churchill and strong and morally clear. We want to be the right side of history. We're good people. That's why we're sanctioning you. And Americans have, the Congress has used that justification to sanction a whole bunch of different countries. And in no case have those sanctions helped the United States at all. In fact, they've done more than anything else to weaken the U.S. dollar. Long term, they will impoverish the United States, those sanctions. There's no question about that. That's been acknowledged for a long time. But they've continued because no one has really pushed back because no one could. And now Iran apparently has successfully, and if it happens, it'll be the first time at this scale that it's ever happened, has pushed the U.S. to roll back those sanctions. Now, there is, a long distance between putting that in paragraph 7 of the MOU, which is not even signed yet, and actually happening. Apparently, it's going to have to go through the Congress. Will that work? Hard to know, hard to believe. But the fact that it's even up for discussion and that the current administration is eager to agree to it tells you that this is the biggest change diplomatically, well, in memory, at least. It's incredible that they actually wrote this down. Paragraph 8. They wait till the 8th paragraph out of 14. The Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. Now, keep in mind, the whole point of this, we were told, was to stop their nuclear weapons program, which didn't actually exist. They had a nuclear program. Was it a nuclear weapons program? Maybe. Why wouldn't it be? Who doesn't want nuclear weapons? France has nuclear weapons. Pakistan does. I mean, everyone wants nukes, or else they get treated like this. But was Iran actually building a nuclear weapon? There's no evidence of that. In fact, there's quite a bit of countervailing evidence that they weren't at the moment. Will they now? Of course they will. Like, who wouldn't? You don't see Trump or Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz standing up and saying, we need to invade North Korea. We can't. They have a nuke.
Yeah.
So we treat them with respect. Despite the fact the leader is very short, we treat them with respect.
Okay.
Because they have a nuke. So the incentive to get nuclear weapons is overwhelming, and all things being equal, countries that can get them will. And Iran is no different. But this does, let's be honest, makes it a lot more likely they will, because, among other things, they'll be able to afford it, which brings us to paragraph 10.
But they'll go so hard on
the United States of America undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU,
they'll apply
until the termination of sanctions, the U.S. Department of Treasury will issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking transactions, insurances, transportation, etc. Now, that sounds technical, but it is an incredible departure from where we were yesterday, where, again, we are at the end stage of a multi-decade effort to isolate Iran in the world, to make even going to Iran as a tourist verboten. You can, by the way, be prosecuted for spending money in Iran, so subject are they to all these sanctions. That this announcement that, oh, we're getting rid of all that stuff and like they can do banking and companies can do business with them and they can export their oil and they're not going to have to put it into unmarked tankers and pretend it came from somewhere else. This is a sea change that, again, connects to the other paragraphs in one way. It treats Iran like a global power, like a sovereign adult nation, not like a rogue terror state, just the opposite. It treats Iran with respect. It treats Iran like a nation to be reckoned with and afforded sovereignty. Incredible.
Lock in with deals on all your game.
You know what's crazy to me? Every country is sovereign. Why do they treat other countries that have sovereignty over their own nation? Why do they choose to stick their nose and just apply their own will in another country? I don't get it. Some places it work. Some places it work, yeah, you can get away with it in small places. They thought they could get away with it in Iran. You know, that's what they wanted us to believe anyway. They wanted us to believe that they was going to take over Iran. They want to kill the people in leadership and just take over, and that would be that, and we would have a new notch on our belt. But that's not the case.
Paragraph 11. And we'll stop after this. The United States of America undertakes to make fully available for use the frozen or unrestricted funds of the Islamic Republic of Iran upon the implementation of this memorandum of understanding. So there are many billions of dollars.
What was that?
That belong to Iran that have been frozen in some cases since 1979 in banks around the world. And Iran has consistently, without getting boring about it, demanded the return. And this was a sticking point during the famous Obama-Iran deal. Iran wanted its money back. And in some cases, they never got it back. The United States just ignored its promise to return the money. But it's Iran's money.
You heard that?
They think about it.
You heard that? So America been making promises on returning funds that they froze, right? Technically, illegally, from Iran, back since when Obama was president. And even before that, I think he said 1979 or something like that. And now they're going to unfreeze all those funds that Iran has in all over the world. Billions of fucking dollars. This is what they do. You know, not only Iran, they freeze your money up too. You got a lot of untouched money. That's why all these websites, they got a bunch of websites out here that tell you that they could get you the funds that the Treasury owe you, right? For just living your everyday life, working, doing this, doing that. You got money that you accumulated in certain accounts, right? Whether that's unemployment, whether that's through Social Security, whether that's through SSI or the government or whatever. But you'll never be able to get a hold of it. They do the same thing that they do to us, to other countries. How do they get away with this shit? Is it possible to get away with this shit? And now they're going to unfreeze a lot of money that they've been, I assume, using in some type of way, shape, form, or fashion. For a long time, they're going to give it back to Iran. Why? Because technically, the U.S. lost this war against Iran. I'm still trying to figure out whether it was all theatrics, whether they knew that they would have to do all this and give it all back, and they just had to come up with a proxy war to you know what I mean, make it give it a reason to the point where they giving everything back, right? They want to give it a reason because they want to have an excuse to tell to the American people. Gotta have an excuse. You can't just yield power, especially with Bob and all the hillbillies and the rednecks and the Ku Klux Klan and all the radical Americans that we have, right? All the radical Americans need explanations. The main voters, they need explanations to why. Why this? Why that? Why is America? You know what I mean? A lot of radical Americans don't mind when America is going to another new country and they're trying to take over shit or trying to help this or help that. As a matter of fact, radical Americans don't like it when America try to help other countries. But they love it when America goes somewhere else and they bomb another country, or they kill a bunch of people, or they put a sanction on another country so another country can't live the way that they live, or impose rules in their country that they want to impose, right?
Bit. It's not a rich country, number 34 in the GDP list, as noted, and they want their money back. And within Iran, this is considered a really significant question. And it's also, of course, a matter of national pride. It's their money. Why can't they have it? Because it's in US dollars. That's why. So with this, they would be getting their money back. So there's kind of no lying about this. This is maybe good for the United States long term. You could certainly argue that. And one hopes it will be. One prays that it will be. It'll be better than what we have now. That's for sure. But it is impossible. From this text, assuming this is real, and we think that it is absolutely impossible to say this is in any sense a win for the United States, because it's not.
The MOU.
This is the
MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, unlocks roughly $300 billion in regional partner reconstruction funds and potentially terminate all types of sanctions upon successful completion of ongoing technical talks. Iran is back to being sovereign, y'all. Why can't you let other countries be sovereign as well? What is the reasoning behind applying so much pressure to a small country, that's never harmed you, right? And you've been doing this for years, and I'm talking about Cuba. What's the logic behind that? To me, there's no logic and no reasoning unless it's just to take over shit, right? We got to realize the U.S. runs itself like the mafia. All of these politicians, they're just well-spoken gangsters. They're gangsters that's not holding a gun or dealing drugs or going to your local stores and extorting them for their money, right? Getting a VIG, right? Getting protection fees and shit like that. But this is what they do all over the world. Extortion. Extortion all over the world. This is what America does. This is what the U.S. does. Extort shit. This is what they're doing. This is what they do to you in your everyday life. Why you gotta struggle, but so many get to live whatever type of life they want? It's about extortion.
Humiliating loss for the United States. And as an American, certainly not gloating about that at all. This is a loss. This is, by the way, the reason that you wouldn't want to start this war in the first place, because it could only end as it has ended. And the people, by the way, who pushed to start this, notably the Israelis and their unregistered agents in the United States, knew that, of course, because diminishing the United States and reducing its footprint and power and influence in the Middle East was part of the plan. Of course. You can't really be in control of your region if you're taking orders from a foreign power. That would be us, the U.S. And the Israelis wanted us out. They wanted us out of the Gulf. They wanted the destruction of our bases in the Gulf, and they got it. But what they didn't want, what they definitely didn't want, was a resolution in which the United States, their patron, their only remaining ally on the planet, admitted out loud that, hey, actually, Iran is a real country that will have a seat at the table going forward. It's an ancient civilization. You can't eliminate it. We just tried. Didn't work. And henceforth, we're going to treat them as not just a real place, but a steward of the most economically significant waterway on the planet. So with this, no matter what happens, even if this is not signed on Friday, with this, the United States has officially acknowledged that Iran is a player. And that changes everything. In the same way that the 1956 Suez Crisis, another crisis, another war over a narrow waterway through which commerce flows, ended the British Empire. Now, of course, you could argue the British Empire really kind of ended with the armistice in 1918 at the end of the First World War. You could definitely argue that it was done by 1945 when they, air quotes now, won World War II. But like a lot of fading empires, it wasn't obvious to the rest of us, so there was muscle memory involved. And Britain had ruled the world. And so it was fading, but not dead.
That's what.
But in the space of
that's what we're going to be doing about this war, right? So-called one, because of course the U.S. is going to tout themselves as having a victory over Iran in some type of way, right? But in all actuality, we lost. Last I checked, that we went to war with Iran like boots on the ground type of war with Iran, because we've been having a paper war with them and having a back and forth with them and everything. But it really kicked off about 7 weeks ago. And really we stopped we stopped the boots on the ground war because we didn't have enough resources to continue to fight the boots on the ground war with Iran. We didn't have enough resources to continue to fight. So that goes to show you our military is one of the greatest militaries in the world, but it doesn't have all the resources that it needs to be able to fight these type of wars that Iran is willing to fight and go the distance that Iran or a lot of other places are willing to go. So we need to just start being a country of peace and prosperity and progression instead of being a country that try to take shit down. You know, it's only but so long other countries will let America come in and just basically bully them out of the things they want, out of the resources that they want, and basically extort them out of their land, you know, or extort them out of, you know, dictate the way that they live their life. You know, that's basically what, you know, other countries is not going for that. You can't go to another country and dictate the way that they live, especially if they're not trying to dictate the way you live in America, right?
Period of time with that fairly complex crisis, Britain was done. Why? Because in the Suez Crisis of 1956, Britain made it really clear that no matter what they said or wanted, they couldn't actually affect the outcome. They didn't have the power to settle things the way they wanted. The U.S. did. And so America, maybe not formally, but certainly practically, took Britain's place as the ruler of the Middle East. With this, the United States has shown that it does not have, despite possessing the world's best or biggest or certainly most generously funded military, does not have the military power to impose its will on the 34th biggest economy in the world.
You basically just said what I said.
That is not a lesson
in a more elegant way.
Decades to come to. That is an extremely obvious conclusion. In fact, that is the obvious conclusion of this document. Again, for good or bad. And there's something poignant about it. There's something sad about it. There's something also bitter about it, considering it was predictable. This is why people opposed a regime change war against Iran, because this was always going to happen. Because the question of Iran's military might, its nuclear program, its ballistic missiles, was always secondary to what really mattered about Iran, which was its geography. It sits on the northern side of the Strait of Hormuz. It could close the strait with mines. It's not that hard. And because of where it sits on the globe, Iran was, and now is universally acknowledged as a powerful nation, as a real place. It's not Somalia. And it never will be Somalia. And this makes it official. So how did we get here? We didn't get here because anyone in the administration decided, hey, let's sign a deal that our last remaining political allies, the neocons, hate. And they have every reason to hate this, for sure. To extend them not grace necessarily, but just to be honest about what's happening. They're upset for good reason. The administration didn't do this to alienate its last remaining pocket of supporters. No, it did this because we had no choice. The two things you need to understand about the American negotiating position right now are these. One, we're running out of weapons. The United States has expended about half of all of its existing missile defense in 7 weeks. Half of its THAAD interceptors gone. So
we couldn't keep up.
At a certain point,
you can't keep doing
you can have whatever intention you want, but if you can't defend yourself against ballistic missiles or even drone attacks, and you can't defend your allies in the region from those attacks, you can't continue. We have reached the limit of our industrial capacity. The United States actually can't defend itself as of right now in a major conflict. We're assuming this is a less than major conflict. It is Iran, after all. It's not China. It's not Russia. But the United States will be unable to defend itself despite having a $1.5 billion a year Pentagon budget because it doesn't have.
But yet and still, we want to go pick on little old Cuba. Little peaceful ass, middle class ass Cuba. But you can't defend yourself against Iran. How fucking sad. How fucking sad. Pitiful. And it goes to show exactly who the people are in office. It goes to show the type of people that we support in these offices, right? They've been doing tyrannical things to us. They've been doing it. But they take your freedom away. You trade your freedom in for security, right? So they give you this play on, oh, this is happening, this building blowing up, and that building blowing up. Well, really, we had a hand in it ourselves. And I'm not a conspiracy theory, nothing like that, right? Because facts are facts. And what it looked like is what it looked like, right? So we'll sit up there, and I'm going to just say this bluntly because this is what I believe. We'll make somebody else, another country, look like they attacked us in a certain way, right? So now we're all like, oh, we need more security in America, right? So now America's going to offer you that security. But it comes at a price. It comes at a price. The price is your freedom, more rights taken away. And to the point where America is no longer, what the fuck? The word is not coming to mind right now. A democracy, right? That's the word. It's no longer a democracy, and it becomes a dictatorship. A dictatorship with the illusion under the veil of a false freedom that you have.
The industrial capacity to replenish those stocks. So we are very vulnerable at this moment, and with every passing day become more vulnerable. Okay, that's the first thing to know. The second thing to know is that gas prices have gone up a lot, $6 for 93 octane in a lot of places, more than that for non-ethanol, for the privilege of using non-ethanol gasoline. It doesn't wreck your motor. It could go a lot higher than that. Brent crude prices, as the president said the other day, have actually not skyrocketed. Well, one of the reasons they haven't is because the United States and other countries, especially China, have massive oil reserves. Ours is called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And the U.S. government draws down on that in order to keep prices from going crazy, from spiking, because that's politically scary. And by the way, it's real. It's an economic factor. It can spur real inflation. Our Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at its lowest point since 1983, in 43 years, right now. So we are running out of oil and we're running out of weapons. And it's not because we were beaten in some sort of, broadside artillery exchange between aircraft carriers. We famously destroyed their Navy and their Air Force, which most people didn't know existed, but it doesn't matter. Because the kind of conflict that is actually taking place is asymmetrical. And we have reached the limit of our ability to fight it, short of using weapons of mass destruction against Iran, which no normal person wants.
Nobody.
Many people.
There you go, y'all. Well, I'm going to end this episode of God Concept Podcast. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate all the subscribers. I encourage you to interact with me in my community, on my feeds and things like that. Let me know topics that you want to hear about. And just stay tuned, man, because my ear is to the streets. My ear is to the, political view of what's going on in our country. And a lot of times we're just not seeing things right because our news don't report things that need to be reported on all the time. Things that's very important that we need to be talking about, we're not talking about. You know, it affects you even if it don't affect you in your everyday life. You know what I mean? It's just like the voting thing. Um, whether you vote or choose not to vote, it still affects you, right? You could choose not to vote, but not voting is a vote as well, right? I mean, we're going through a lot, so it's time to really be more aware of what's going on in the world, what's going on in your city, in your country, in other places, what we're doing in other places and things like that. And it's important to hold people in office, our politicians, our local politicians, all the way up to the White House. It's important to hold them accountable for the things that they do, especially your president. Especially your president. He has to be held accountable. And also, I'm going to take this time to say America needs to stop going for Cuba the way it's going for Cuba. Because it's been trying to take over Cuba and apply pressure on Cuba for a long fucking time. Just let Cuba live. Because Cuban is a sovereign nation as well. Just like Iran was, and we was calling them terrorists for a long time. They try to demonize Cuba and things like that. They try to demonize a lot of people. Stop trying to extort. Just because you're short-handed and you spend too much money, trying to get to Mars or whatever the fuck you're doing with our own taxpaying dollars. Now you're going to be giving our taxpaying dollars to Iran and things like this. Stop it. Free up them people funds, free up Iran's funds, and take the money that you was going to give to Iran, that you promised Iran, put that somewhere else where it could be used, where it could be useful. Stop trying to have everybody in bed with you, because not everybody wants to be in bed with you. Some places just want to be sovereign states and not have the way that they live infringed upon, right? They want to live the way that they want to live at the end of the day. Who doesn't want to live? That's like somebody coming in my house and telling me that I decorated it all wrong, right? It's like somebody coming in your house and telling you, oh, well, you can't do this in your house. Or at this time, you got to turn off the TVs, right? Somebody coming in your house telling you exactly how to run your household. That's what America does around the world. They go in another person's house and tell them how to run their own house. You can't do that, because after a while, you're going to get thrown the fuck out. You're going to get thrown the fuck out. You're going to get shown the hard way that you don't run shit in somebody else's house. You're a guest in somebody else's house. Be thankful and be grateful and honored that you're even allowed to step foot or have a base or whatever it is, kick your feet up in somebody else's house. And on that note, this is my episode of God Concept Podcast. Please, guys, like, share, subscribe. All the love is appreciated. And I'm working on monetization of this channel, because I got a lot of episodes with a lot of different information from my personal life and things that I see in my own point of view. So yeah, continue to follow, share, and subscribe. Peace.